Picture this. It's July 2024, and American fighter jets are scrambling into the sky near Alaska. The reason? 4 military bombers are approaching American airspace, 2 from Russia and 2 from China, flying together in a joint patrol. This isn't some dusty Cold War movie. This is happening right now, in our world, above one of the most remote and frozen places on Earth, the Arctic. Now fast forward to January 2025. The President of the United States is standing at a podium, making headlines around the world. He is talking about Greenland, that massive ice-covered island between North America and Europe that most people barely think about. But he's not just talking. He's threatening Denmark, Greenland's governing nation, with economic punishment. He's refusing to rule out using military force, all because he wants to acquire Greenland for the United States. The Danish Prime Minister is furious. European leaders are shocked. Greenland's own government is saying absolutely not. We're not for sale. And the world is asking, what on earth is going on? Here's one more piece of the puzzle. In September 2024, Chinese Coast Guard ships and Russian Border Patrol vessels spent 35 days sailing together through Arctic waters. This had never happened before. 2 nations that weren't traditionally Arctic powers, now patrolling together in the frozen north, showing the world they're partners in this region. So what's happening? Why is the Arctic, a place that's been frozen, remote, and mostly ignored by global politics for decades, suddenly turning into one of the most contested and dangerous places on the planet? Why are the world's biggest powers rushing to this icy wilderness, ready to risk diplomatic crises and even military confrontation? The answer lies in something that's transforming our entire planet: climate change. The Arctic isn't just warming. It's warming more than twice as fast as anywhere else on Earth. In 2024, global temperatures crossed a critical threshold for the first time, reaching 1.55 degrees Celsius above what they were before the Industrial Revolution. But in the Arctic, the changes are even more extreme. The ice that has locked this region away from human activity for all of recorded history is melting. And as it melts, it's revealing something extraordinary. Beneath that ice and frozen ground lies an estimated 30% of all the world's undiscovered natural gas and 13% of its undiscovered oil. There are vast deposits of rare earth minerals, the special materials needed to make everything from your smartphone to electric cars to advanced military weapons. We're talking about resources worth trillions of dollars, just sitting there, suddenly becoming accessible for the first time in human history. But it's not only about what's under the ice. It's also about what's on top of it, or rather, what used to be on top of it. As the ice melts, new shipping routes are opening up. Ships can now travel between Asia and Europe through the Arctic, cutting their journey by up to 40%. Imagine cutting 10 days off a cargo ship's travel time. That means cheaper goods, lower fuel costs, and avoiding dangerous choke points like the Suez Canal or the waters near Somalia where pirates operate. This is the Arctic Scramble, a race for resources, routes, and power that will reshape how nations interact, how goods move around our world, and who holds influence in the 21st century. And it's happening right now. Let's talk about what's actually happening to the Arctic ice and why it matters so much. Scientists have been tracking Arctic sea ice for decades, and what they're seeing is alarming. Every summer, when temperatures rise, the ice melts back. Every winter, it refreezes. But each year, there's less ice refreezing than before. In fact, summer sea ice in the Arctic has been disappearing at a rate of about 13% every decade. Think about that for a moment. More than 1/10 of the ice gone every 10 years. Scientists now believe that by sometime in the 2030s, we could see summers in the Arctic that are virtually ice-free. That's just a few years away. What does this mean in the real world? Well, ships are already taking advantage. In 2024, the Northern Sea Route, that south the shipping lane that runs along Russia's northern coast, saw 38 million metric tons of cargo pass through. That's a massive amount of trade. And it's not slowing down. In fact, experts predict that foreign ships using this route will increase by 50% in 2025. We're not talking about a few adventurous vessels here and there. This is becoming a major global shipping corridor. To give you a concrete example, in September 2024, a Chinese shipping company called Nunu Shipping launched a regular container service between Shanghai and a Russian port called Arkhangelsk. This might sound boring, but it's actually historic. It's one of the first regular, scheduled container shipping lines through the Arctic. Compare this route to the traditional one through the Suez Canal. A ship traveling from Shanghai to Rotterdam in Europe can save 10 entire days by going through the Arctic instead. That's not just faster, it's massively cheaper. Less fuel burned, fewer wages to pay the crew, and you avoid geopolitical danger zones like the Red Sea, where attacks on commercial shipping have become a real problem in recent years. Now let's talk about what's under the ice. Russia has been aggressively developing huge natural gas projects in its Arctic region. These aren't small operations. They're multi-billion-dollar facilities that extract and liquefy natural gas, then ship it around the world. Greenland, that island at the center of so much recent controversy, is sitting on extraordinary mineral wealth. In May 2025, Greenland's government granted a 30-year permit to a Danish-French company to mine a special rock called anorthosite, which could revolutionize aluminum production and make it more environmentally friendly. But here's where it gets really interesting: rare earth elements. These are special minerals with exotic names like neodymium, dysprosium, and terbium. You probably haven't heard of them, but they're in almost every piece of modern technology you use. Your smartphone screen, the battery in an electric car, wind turbines generating clean energy, advanced military radar systems. All of them need rare earth elements to function. Right now, China controls most of the world's production of these materials. Western countries are desperate to find alternative sources, and Greenland has some of the largest rare earth deposits on the planet. In June 2025, the U.S. Export-Import Bank showed interest in funding a mine in Greenland with $120 million, potentially the first major overseas mining investment under the Trump administration. The Arctic environment is brutal and unforgiving. The weather is unpredictable, ice conditions can change rapidly, there's almost no infrastructure for rescue or repair, and insurance costs are astronomical. But the potential rewards are so enormous that countries and companies are willing to take those risks. To understand who's fighting over the Arctic, we need to start with Russia, because Russia has massive advantages that no other country can match. Look at a map of the Arctic, and you'll see that Russia has the longest Arctic coastline of any nation, over 24,000 kilometers of frozen shore. That's more than half of the entire Arctic Ocean's rim. But geography is only part of Russia's strength. Russia has been preparing for Arctic competition for years. The country operates more than 40 icebreakers, specialized ships designed to smash through frozen seas. Some of them are nuclear-powered, meaning they can operate indefinitely without refueling. For comparison, the United States has exactly 2 icebreakers, and they're both old and outdated. Russia has also been rebuilding military bases across its Arctic territory, some of them originally built during the Soviet era and abandoned after the Cold War ended. These aren't just symbolic outposts. They're equipped with advanced air defense missiles. They house thousands of specially trained Arctic troops, and they host modern fighter jets. Russia's strategy is clear: control the Northern Sea route completely. Russia claims full sovereignty over these waters and requires every ship that wants to pass through to get official permission and pay for Russian icebreaker escorts. The United States and NATO countries reject this claim, arguing these are international waters where ships should have freedom of navigation. But here's the reality: Russia has the military power in the region to enforce its rules, whether other countries like it or not. Now let's talk about China, which is thousands of kilometers away from the Arctic Circle, but has declared itself a near-Arctic state. That's a bold claim for a country that isn't anywhere near the Arctic, but China is deadly serious about establishing a presence there. In 2018, China announced its Arctic policy, which it calls the Polar Silk Road, connecting it to China's massive Belt and Road Infrastructure Initiative. China operates research icebreakers, has deployed satellites to monitor Arctic ice conditions, and has been trying to invest in Arctic infrastructure and mining projects across multiple countries. Here's where things get complicated. Most Arctic nations, Canada, the United States, Norway, Denmark, have been suspicious or outright hostile to Chinese Arctic ambitions. They worry about Chinese espionage, about becoming dependent on Chinese investment, about strategic vulnerabilities. But Russia, increasingly isolated from the West after invading Ukraine in 2022, has welcomed Chinese partnership with open arms. The result has been an unprecedented strengthening of Chinese-Russian cooperation in the Arctic. The evidence is everywhere. Between 2022 and 2024, China and Russia held 27 joint military exercises together, including 7 naval exercises just in 2024. Several of these exercises took place in Arctic waters. Remember those bombers I mentioned at the beginning? That July 2024 patrol near Alaska was the first time Russian and Chinese strategic bombers flew together near American territory. A month later, in September 2024, Chinese Coast Guard vessels and Russian border patrol ships spent 35 days sailing together through the Bering Sea, the Chukchi Sea, and into the Arctic Ocean. This wasn't a one-time thing. It followed a formal agreement signed in April 2023 to deepen maritime cooperation. The United States, meanwhile, has woken up late to Arctic competition and is scrambling to catch up. America operates one critical facility in Greenland called Pituffik Space Base, used for detecting missile launches and tracking objects in space. It's strategically vital, which is exactly why President Trump became so fixated on acquiring Greenland. Trump's Greenland push needs some context. In December 2024, shortly before returning to office, Trump publicly declared that America needs Greenland for national security. By January 2025, he escalated dramatically, threatening tariffs against Denmark and refusing to rule out military force to acquire the territory. From Trump's perspective, the logic makes sense. Greenland sits between North America and Europe, guards crucial sea lanes where NATO monitors Russian submarines, hosts that vital space base, and holds those enormous rare earth deposits we talked about earlier. But Greenland's government rejected the idea completely. The Prime Minister said clearly, "We don't want to be Danish, we don't want to be American, we want to be Greenlandic." Denmark's government was furious. Leaders across Europe condemned Trump's threats. In response, Denmark announced a $6 billion investment in Arctic defense and led NATO's largest Arctic military exercise in early 2025. This crisis revealed something profound. The Arctic has become central to European security concerns. Finland and Sweden, 2 countries that stayed neutral throughout the entire Cold War, joined NATO in 2023 and 2024 specifically because of Russian aggression. Now 7 out of 8 Arctic Council members are NATO allies, completely surrounding Russia's northern border. But this expansion came at a terrible cost. After Russia invaded Ukraine, the 7 non-Russian Arctic Council members suspended all cooperation with Russia, freezing 128 scientific and environmental projects. The Arctic Council, which was founded on the principle that Arctic nations should cooperate despite political differences, essentially stopped functioning. Now let us talk about what all this competition actually looks like on the ground and in the water. The Arctic is seeing military activity at levels not witnessed since the Cold War ended more than 30 years ago. But unlike the Cold War, when the United States and Soviet Union faced each other across clearly defined lines, today's Arctic tensions are messier and more unpredictable. Throughout 2024 and into 2025, NATO countries and their partners have been conducting major military exercises with names like Arctic Edge, Ice Camp, and Nordic Response. These aren't just shows of force. They're testing whether military equipment actually works in extreme Arctic conditions, whether different countries' forces can coordinate effectively, and whether supply lines can function when it's 40 degrees below zero. Russia has responded with its own large-scale drills, involving thousands of personnel, testing long-range missiles, submarine operations, and Arctic warfare tactics. But modern Arctic competition isn't just about conventional military power. There's growing concern about what experts call hybrid warfare, attacks that happen below the level of open military conflict. The Arctic seabed is crisscrossed with fiber optic cables carrying internet data and energy pipelines transporting oil and gas. These are extremely vulnerable to sabotage. In December 2024, a Russian oil tanker was accused of damaging a power line connecting Finland and Estonia under the Baltic Sea. In November 2024, a Chinese vessel was investigated for potentially cutting underwater data cables in the Baltic. These incidents show the kinds of tactics that could easily be used in the Arctic. The Northern Sea route has become the single biggest point of friction. Russia treats this route as its sovereign territory, demanding that all ships get permits and pay for icebreaker escorts. The United States and NATO insist this violates international law and freedom of navigation. The numbers tell the story of why this matters so much. Applications to use the Northern Sea route surged by 50% in 2025, with 196 ships applying for summer access. Many of these were foreign-flagged vessels, and many were tied to trade between China and Russia, helping Russia evade Western sanctions. This creates a strategic trap for Western nations. As more countries, including American allies like South Korea and Japan, start using the Northern Sea route, because it's cheaper and faster, they develop economic interests in keeping that route open and Russia happy. Economic advantage starts to outweigh political opposition to Russian actions elsewhere in the world. Lost in all these military and economic calculations are the people who actually live in the Arctic. Around 4 million people call the Arctic home, including roughly 500,000 indigenous people, Inuit, Sami, and many other communities. These are people whose families have lived in harmony with this environment for thousands of years. Climate change is devastating their communities. In Alaska alone, about 60% of native villages are classified as environmentally threatened by rising seas, melting permafrost, and changing weather patterns. Indigenous peoples are watching their homelands become bargaining chips in great power competition. Mining companies want to extract resources from traditional territories. Shipping lanes cut through waters where people hunt marine mammals for food. Military bases and exercises disrupt wildlife and sacred sites. Greenland's Inuit people have accused outside powers of practicing what they call green colonialism, using environmental concerns as justification to exploit resources while ignoring the rights and voices of the people who actually live there. The environmental stakes go beyond indigenous communities. Melting permafrost doesn't just threaten buildings and roads built on top of it. Permafrost contains trapped greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and methane, that get released as it melts, accelerating the very climate change that's causing the problem. More ships in Arctic waters means more risk of oil spills in pristine environments where cold temperatures make cleanup nearly impossible. Even the black carbon, soot, from ship exhaust darkens ice and snow, making it absorb more sunlight and melt faster. The Arctic used to be governed by an unusual spirit of cooperation. The Arctic Council brought together all 8 Arctic nations to work on science, environmental protection, and safety, explicitly excluding military issues. Norwegian diplomats proudly described the region as high north, low tension. But after Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, that cooperative spirit shattered. The Arctic Council suspended work with Russia, and there's currently no functioning mechanism to manage disputes, set environmental standards, or prevent military incidents. Multiple nations have submitted overlapping claims to extend their territories in the Arctic under international law. These competing claims involve areas potentially holding trillions of dollars in resources. Some claims overlap significantly, guaranteeing future disputes. And there's no clear process for resolving them now that the main cooperative body isn't functioning. The pace of change is breathtaking. Just in the past 5 years, we've seen Arctic shipping more than double, NATO expand to include 7 Arctic nations, China and Russia dramatically intensify military cooperation. Trump threatened force over Greenland, and multiple countries announce multi-billion-dollar Arctic defense spending increases. What happens next depends on choices being made right now in capitals around the world, and in indigenous communities fighting to protect their future. The ice is melting, the old rules are breaking, and nobody knows for certain what comes next. The Arctic Scramble is about much more than ice and shipping routes and military bases in a remote corner of the world. It's a window into how competition between great powers will play out for the rest of this century. What's happening in the Arctic right now is setting precedents that will echo in disputes over Antarctica, over deep ocean mining, over resources in space, over every frontier that technology makes newly accessible to human exploitation. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This affects everyone, not just the countries that border the Arctic Circle. Those shipping routes being fought over will determine how cheaply goods can move between Asia, Europe, and North America, which means they'll affect the price of nearly everything you buy. The rare earth minerals being competed for will determine who controls the supply chains for smartphones, electric vehicles, renewable energy technology, and advanced weapon systems. The military tensions building in the Arctic could spiral into conflicts that draw in NATO, Russia, China, and potentially trigger a wider war. The environmental damage being done as permafrost melts and oil exploration ramps up will accelerate climate change that impacts every person on this planet. The Arctic exposes the deepest contradictions of our time. How do we balance national security concerns with environmental protection? How do we pursue economic development while respecting the rights of Indigenous peoples who've lived on these lands for thousands of years? How do we manage competition between great powers when we desperately need cooperation to address climate change? These aren't abstract philosophical questions. They're urgent practical dilemmas being confronted right now by policymakers, military planners, business leaders, and Indigenous communities. There are some reasons for hope. Despite all the tensions, Arctic nations still manage to cooperate in limited areas of scientific research. Norway has tried to maintain a balanced approach, building up its defenses while also emphasizing environmental stewardship. Canada is investing in Indigenous-led conservation initiatives. The Polar Code provides at least a basic framework for regulating shipping safety and environmental standards in Arctic waters. These aren't nothing. They're foundations that could potentially be built upon. But let's be honest about the trajectory we're on right now. Military budgets dedicated to Arctic operations are soaring. Environmental regulations are being weakened or ignored in the rush to exploit resources before competitors can get there. Indigenous voices are being drowned out by national security imperatives and corporate interests. The international institutions that were designed to foster cooperation and manage disputes have been weakened or abandoned entirely. The rhetoric from major powers is becoming more aggressive, more territorial, more zero-sum. So what does the future hold? In the most optimistic scenario, nations eventually realize that certain Arctic challenges, environmental monitoring, search and rescue operations, scientific research, preventing ecological catastrophes, require cooperation even when they're competing politically and economically. They rebuild governance structures with Indigenous peoples playing meaningful roles in decision-making. They strengthen environmental protections while developing resources more responsibly. They manage their military competition to avoid accidents and miscalculation. In the pessimistic scenario, competition continues to escalate. A maritime incident in contested waters, maybe a collision between military vessels, maybe a confrontation over navigation rights, spirals into open military conflict. Environmental disasters result from hasty, poorly regulated resource extraction. The Arctic becomes another active front in a new Cold War, with military buildups, proxy conflicts, and breakdown of communication between nuclear-armed powers. Climate change accelerates unchecked because nations are too busy competing to cooperate on the problem affecting them all. The reality will probably land somewhere in between those extremes. Muddled governance, partial cooperation mixed with competition, occasional crises that get defused, incremental environmental damage, and slow, reactive adaptation to changes rather than proactive planning. But the decisions being made in the next few years about military posture, about resource development, about Indigenous rights, about environmental protection, about international cooperation will determine which direction we lean. The ice is melting. The old order that governed the Arctic for decades is breaking apart. A new Arctic is emerging, and with it, a new set of rules about how nations compete, how resources get developed, and who has power in our interconnected world. The Arctic scramble has already begun. We can't stop it, but we can still influence how it unfolds and what kind of world emerges when the ice finally melts. The question facing us all is simple but profound. Will we compete with wisdom, or will we scramble toward catastrophe? The answer is being written right now, in the frozen north, while most of the world isn't paying attention. Maybe it's time we all started looking north.